This week, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the Trump administration can move forward with mass layoffs inside one agency in particular.
We had a big win with the Supreme Court on the Department of Education. We want, as you know, we want to bring education back to the states, take the federal government out of it.
President Trump acknowledged the ruling before heading off to Pennsylvania this week. It's not a final ruling, but the layoffs are being allowed for now as litigation continues. 3 justices dissented here, including Sonia Sotomayor, who called it indefensible, saying the threat to the separation of powers here is grave. The department's funding is congressionally authorized. Still, it is the stated goal of President Trump to end this department, and this ruling no doubt clears a path for that to happen.
It absolutely was a monumental decision for us to get clearance from the Supreme Court to continue the process that we have started at the Department of Education.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon.
To make sure that we are looking at all of the programs at the Department of Education where they will best be served, perhaps in other agencies, or perhaps some of them might not continue. But the goal from the president from day one was to close down the Department of Education because he believes that it can best be handled, given back to the states. If you think about it, this department was formed in 1980. And since that time, we've spent over $3 trillion for bureaucracy and education programs to see education continue to decline in our country and put us so far down in comparison into other countries. And the president was embarrassed by this. He was angry by it when he came into office. And he said, you know, this is something that's not working. We have to change this. We were doing better before there was a Department of Education, and that's where we need to be today.
Wow. I understand, though, the Supreme Court decision is not the final ruling on the matter, right? That there is a continuing legal case on this. Could you be forced to rehire all these folks later on? Or if you're allowed to go this far forward with the initial plan, would that be unlikely?
It is very unlikely. I think that there perhaps might be some lawsuits down the road, but honestly, this was not an easy decision. And I've been in the private sector and gone through, restructuring before. And what you do when you come on board and you take a look at the people who are there, you first look at, okay, what is the job that needs to get done? Where are those key people that can get that job done? How can we do it efficiently? And in a private sector, it would be for the betterment of the company. And I believe in this particular instance, it's for the betterment of the country, because as states have more control over what they're doing with their education, they continue to get the funding through the Title I-A and IDEA and other appropriated funds from Congress. But that pass-through, which is actually what the Department of Education is, can happen through other agencies. In the workforce that we have now, we're continuing to meet all of our statutory requirements, and we've not missed any deadlines. I think we're operating more efficiently in the current state where we are.
Tell us then, Madam Secretary, what is needed to go from this point to full closure? Like you said, there will be other agencies that will have to pick up, handling Pell Grants and student loans. But you're right, there is a little bit of confusion among us, right? Because this is a congressionally authorized agency. It will eventually require some congressional action, right, to fully officially close this thing.
Yes, it will. It was statutorily established by Congress, and it would take a vote of Congress to close the Department of Education. And so when I was asked about this during my confirmation hearing, my comment was back to Congress and also in private meetings that I've had with senators. They've asked me about that. Well, you can't unilaterally shut this down. And I said, what I would like to be able to do is to start taking programs and working with different agencies to make these programs work differently and prove, if you will, to Congress that students in our country will be better served by having these programs handled in a different way. And certainly there would be no loss in the progression of the programs, and I believe they could be more efficiently handled. I can give you an example of one of the things that we did as a result of the Supreme Court ruling is activating, if you will, what was called an interagency agreement with the Department of Labor we had signed this interagency agreement, and this is things that is done through government all the time. And it is you work with another agency for a combination of programs. So when you were mentioning Pell Grants before, and when you were mentioning, you might not have mentioned development of workforce, but that's something that's clearly, on our mind at the Department of Education. And I have been working very closely with the Secretary of Labor to implement this interagency agreement. And she and I both are very confident and excited about how we can work together to make these programs better. The Education Department for a while will have oversight over them, but they will be handled through the Department of Labor. And if you think about the fact that there were 43 different agencies who had, workforce programs, it was just incredibly inefficient. And now to have just education and labor working together to consolidate these, it will just be a really good thing for a development of our workforce. So those are the kinds of things that I will want to work on and show to Congress that this can be handled better, more efficiently. And I think that in the end, if given the chance, we will prove how not only are our students not harmed, but they are the beneficiaries of having all of their education in the states closest to them, where parents and superintendents and other educators have the benefit of working directly with the students.
One group that is not a fan of this plan is the National Education Association. The teachers union group just recently had their annual meeting, and among the business items approved was language instructing members to, quote, defend democracy against Trump's embrace of fascism by using the term fascism to correctly characterize the president's programs and actions, end quote. NEA President Becky Pringle said this on stage.
We cannot fear the future. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Say the words.
This despite President Trump's executive orders, which seek to end the use of DEI in programs that receive federal dollars.
Well, I think it's totally ridiculous. And for those comments to even come about, if you think about fascism, it's more control, more centralized government. And what the president is saying is less. Let's send education back to the states, because no one size fits all for education, and each state is better equipped to work with its communities, to work with businesses in its states, to determine how education will best serve the citizens of their states. And I think that's the appropriate place for it to be, but to call it fascism is just utterly ridiculous.
Does closing down the department at the federal level leave at all, possibly, a power vacuum? Like, will folks look to a national organization like the NEA even more for guidance or information or plan without a federal department?
Well, let me just address what the Department of Education does not do. The Department of Education does not educate one child. We don't develop curriculum. We don't buy books. We don't hire teachers. We don't do any of that within the states. The Department of Education is primarily a pass-through for money that's appropriated, by Congress to be delivered to the states, to their, often their superintendents, directly, or the commissioners of education in those states to distribute within the states. So, the teachers union, I don't think clearly would have any position to be any stronger. I think as a point of fact, when you think about what the president wants to do, and that is to have educational choice.
Right.
He doesn't care if a child is educated at home, in a charter school, a public school, a private school, a religious school, as long as there are opportunities for students not to be trapped in failing schools. And we have failed our students with the current system that we have for education, and it needs to change. And the best agents for change are those that are conducting education closest to the child, because that's how they'll benefit the most.
Madam Secretary, before I let you go, one more. Do you think when you hear this, the Gallup poll, the latest Gallup poll has American trust in the education system at its lowest point ever since 2001, 73% say they're dissatisfied. Do you hear that number and think most Americans agree with you that this department needs to close, that this is something's so wrong that things need to change in the way this president wants?
Well, if you look at the NAEP scores, which is our nation's report card that came out just before the president took office, and when we look at the fact that 70% of eighth graders cannot read proficiently and 72% of them cannot do math, I think it is quite justified that the feelings that we are failing our students I think that's an accurate assessment. And no wonder, that we have such low regard for education policies in our country today.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it.